But the upside of speaking out, as hard as it is your child to get a mother that believes them, and I think belief is one of the biggest healers. And this is all hindsight. Remember, I was in it. I didn't know this at the time, but I now have a daughter that she still needs a lot of support, but we have a very close relationship, and she is a healthy, functioning adult, and she has got a chance of a good life. Just before we left, she said something about her grandfather being naked. And my husband and I were like, whoa, what are you talking about? And obviously a little bit shocked by her comment. And my husband went, because he lived with us. And then she sort of giggled and shut up, didn't make any more of it. I'm working with so many people that aren't anywhere close. And it is heartbreaking. It is. Because before I did this work, I actually they believed in the justice system.
Has it helped you heal in some way? And has it then helped Poppy as well, having you being able to support her and help her from a therapist's point of view?
I'd like to think so, to the Poppy bit. And absolutely, to me, without a doubt. And I continue to learn.
Yeah.
And that was it. I could see by the look on her face that this had happened, and our world literally turned upside down overnight. It was just horrifying.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Be Brave podcast. I'm Chloe, your host, and today we have Miranda. Hi Miranda, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here, to tell your story, and to be oh so open with us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So I just wanted to sort of ease into the conversation, and with the sort of first question, with how are you feeling about doing this podcast with me? Like, what are your thoughts about it?
I think it's a brilliant idea for a podcast. I know that obviously from the work that I do, there's a lot of people that are looking for this kind of support. So I'm a little bit nervous because I'm talking very much about me. So I'm sort of out of therapist mode and into talking about myself, which not quite so comfortable. But I'm hoping that by hearing another mother, so to speak, that anyone else that is struggling or is going through what I've gone through can gain some benefit from what we've been through as a family.
Yeah, definitely. I think hearing from that point of view is really, really important. And I mean, I think there is things out there, but people don't talk about it as much as like a family. What I went through, I don't really talk about it with my family as much, and as being open. So hearing it from another mother's point of view, I think is, for me as well, is going to be really eye-opening. So for those who are listening to the podcast today, could you share a little bit about who you are right now, and not just what you do, but who you are as a person in this chapter of your life?
I've just become a grandma for the second time.
Congratulations.
So, and yeah, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm an advocate for those that have been through CSA. I'm a survivor's mother. Yeah, I've got lots of hats on. Yeah. It's really difficult to just sort of narrow it down to one thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I completely know what you mean. You're lots and lots of different people. And I suppose every day is going to be very different. So one day you will be a mother, the next day you'll be a grandmother, and it's an advocate. And so can you tell us a little bit about what you do and in terms of like your work? So you are a therapist, and how you got into that and where you started.
Yeah, I've been a therapist now qualified for coming up to 5 years, I think. That basically came about because of what happened to my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I very much saw what happened to her, and as her mum, I could not get her to see she'd done nothing wrong. I mean, obviously we'll elaborate on that in a bit, but it was seeing what a therapist did with my daughter in probably 6 weeks at that time, and she was 11, that I could not do. It was just, at the time, quite mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And such a huge relief, because I just couldn't get my daughter to see that she'd done nothing wrong. And there was this moment, literally we were driving along in the car, and she turned to me and she said, "Mum, it wasn't my fault, was it?" And that, I was just like, wow. And really from that moment onwards, particularly for her, she was able to deal with things very, very differently. And I think that was what made me really inquisitive. It's like, what did the therapist know that I did? Like, it wasn't a case of me just telling her that she'd done nothing wrong. All of a sudden, in the learning that I have done, I realized it's much, much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And then again, because of all that happened to us as a family, it enabled me to train as a therapist. I thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, I've absolutely loved the learning. And for me, very much the psychoeducation, understanding how a wonderful brain protects us is fascinating. And the journey hasn't finished, it's an ongoing learning, I should say. And that's the bit I love.
So were you so you weren't a therapist before Poppy disclosed to you? So you had done no training whatsoever, and then it was just purely from that you went, I'm gonna go into it. That's incredible.
It was a bit longer than that.
Yeah.
It sort of came out of it. It was really, and I think because of the devastation that it caused with what my daughter Poppy went through, and the devastation, that it caused, it was sort of like, how can I take something that's been so dark, that's turned our world upside down? And I think as well, it's one of the hardest things to hear as a mum, that your child has been sexually abused by their grandfather. And he lived with us. He was very much a trusted member. He helped us with childcare. It literally blew our world apart. And so I found out very much through my training, although I had an inkling it might be the case, because of how people were responding to me, that it's very hard to find therapists and so on that will work with this, because it's so hard to hear.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, I've heard it in the hardest place you can hear it. That's my daughter. So if I can use that for some good, then something worthwhile out of all this horror it gives some purpose to what we've been through.
And do you think with all the training that you had and now becoming a therapist yourself, do you think that kind of healed a part of you as well? Because obviously when it obviously happened to your daughter, but when something like that happened, it does, like you were saying, it's devastating for the whole family, and it's a massive knock-on effect for everyone involved. And I don't think that there's enough support for families. We'll probably go into that in another episode or even today, but there isn't enough support out there. And my family got no support whatsoever when offered anything. And it's how you deal with that. So I suppose, like, since you've gone through all your training and you understand it a little bit more from that side, has that helped you heal? Because it's, at the end of the day, it's trauma for everyone as well. So you had not the same trauma, but you had the trauma of what happened. Has it helped you heal in some way? And has it then helped Poppy as well, having you being able to support her and help her from a therapist point of view?
I'd like to think so, to the Poppy bit. And absolutely, to me, without a doubt, and I continue to learn.
Yeah.
When you very first do your training as a therapist, it's very theoretical. And if I'm honest, we didn't touch much on trauma in a way that I have now learned about it. It's more as you sort of do your qualification, if you like, and it's when you come out the other side and you start working with clients, and then you look around and find those that inspire you that are already in this space. Then you really start, for me personally, that's when it really opened my eyes and really helped me to cope, because it really does. I mean, speaking for myself, not as a therapist, but as a mum, I didn't feel like much of a mum when she told me what she told me. It was like, how am I a mum when I couldn't see that happening right under my nose? And I know from a lot of people's perspective, that's one of the questions and one of the most difficult things to hear people say, well, how could you have not known? You were a mum, I would have considered myself very close to, or I've got 2 older children as well, very close to all of them growing up. And I'd have liked to have thought that I knew what was happening. I put this little girl to bed every night. How could I have not known?
Yeah.
But with the training that I've done, and specifically around CSA and the perpetrator, and understanding how perpetrators work. And when I say understanding how they work, what I mean by that is I'll never actually understand why they do what they do. But what I mean is in the amount of manipulation that goes on behind the scene that you are sadly blissfully unaware of.
They're so clever.
They really are in sheep's clothing. And
Yeah.
generally, I mean, in my case, my father-in-law was a scout leader, had lived for 30 years, was hugely respected within the local village. They do hide in plain sight. And that is something really struggled to understand, how a man of his standing could do what he'd done to my daughter.
Yeah. Awful.
Right under my nose. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I think that plagues you the most
Yeah.
as a mother.
Yeah. It's interesting because my mum, it didn't happen as in close proximity as I suppose what happened with Poppy, but he was a trusted person within the community and he worked for my dad and people knew him. And again, people don't have it written across their forehead, I'm evil or I'm whatever you want to call them. They don't, they're so clever and they're such fantastic manipulators and they groom
everybody.
And he groomed me. And I can imagine my mum has got an awful lot of guilt. So she always used to say, I don't understand how I didn't know. And I think I still struggle sometimes where I think, why did I not say anything? Why did I not tell my mum? I still do to this day, have a very close relationship with my mum. And I had a very open relationship with my parents. Why didn't I say anything? Why did I not speak up? And I had a lot of that, very similar to what you were saying about Poppy thing, it was my fault. And I had that still have every now and again, like, I should have done something, I should have said something. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that. And I suppose having that training and understanding it a little bit more has definitely helped. It's just really interesting to hear it from that point of view. And yeah, I know. And I would say to my mum, it wasn't your fault. Like don't have any guilt because you were still a great mum. And I always say it to my mum, she's a great mum and she still is a great mum. And it was not her fault. It was his. All the blame is on the perpetrator. So yeah, thank you for sharing that as well. Appreciate it. I'm going to go on to maybe the next couple of questions. So this episode centers around how one moment completely redefined your life, and we've kind of touched on it. And if you feel safe to share and you want to share, can you take us back to when Poppy disclosed what had happened and what that moment was for you as a mother, and what was your response, and how old was she, and where? Take us back if you feel comfortable. If you don't, obviously that's absolutely fine.
No, it's okay. Basically, Poppy had been really struggling with anxiety, and we thought she was quite happy at school. She was very fortunate. She had a nice school that she went to, but she kept coming home with this feeling of, she called it guilt. And she used to always put her hand on her solar plexus or just under her rib cage and sort of say, I feel really sick again. And I feel really anxious. And at school she was doing PHSE, and not that we'd made any link at this point, but throughout the PHSE lessons, they were focusing on, say, bullying and various other things that children are faced with. And she'd come home and she would say things like, Mum, do you think maybe I was a bully? And I'd be like, what do you mean? I think maybe I'm not a nice person. So she was having these lessons and really sort of thinking that they were to me, directed at her. And as a mum, I was a bit and she was kept talking about this anxiety and feeling sick. And she'd wake up and sort of come in the morning, she'd go, Mum, I've got that feeling again. And this particular day, she was actually sick. And she'd actually also asked if she could have counselling because she was worried. And at school, they just had Place to Be start at school. So it was all quite confusing. I was completely clueless, but I knew she wasn't right. And I actually thought her being sick was down to the anxiety that she was talking about. So I phoned the school and they said, no, keep her off. I know you think it's anxiety. And I sort of checked with the school that she hadn't been, were they aware of any bullying or any issues that were happening to her? No, it all seemed okay. So this particular day kept her home from school. And then where we lived, there's a lovely big field near us. So we took the dog for a walk to get some fresh air. And we were chatting, and I just sort of said to her, I was just trying to figure out where this feeling of not being a nice person, talking about bullying, and she's also like worried about racism and, like big things. And I can't quite remember how, but I just said to her, "Babes, has anything awful happened to you? Do you want to tell me, what it's something horrible?" Thinking she would say, "I've been badly bullied," or "somebody has said this about me," but she was trying in her way to tell me in another. And she said, "It has gone." And that threw me completely. I didn't know what she was referring to. She was basically referring to when she was 4, we were going to Legoland for the day, and just before we left, she said something about her grandfather being naked. And my husband and I were like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" And obviously a little bit shocked by her comment. And my husband went, because he lived with us, and then she sort of giggled and shut up, didn't make any more of it. But we went down and spoke to him, and he very cleverly, we now know, said, "Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. I stepped out the shower. She'd walked in the bedroom. It was really embarrassing." So that was, to us, that was her. But because she'd now done this PHSE, she was now beginning to understand what was happening.
How old was she at this point?
Now she was 11.
Okay.
But what she referred to very specifically that day was Poppy and I sat in the car, and my husband, went in to see his father and said, "What the hell's going on?" Quite angry, "How dare you," sort of thing. And obviously his father just, quashed everything and reassured us and apologized. And that was it. As far as we get, we never, it's the thing that, one of the things that plagues me the most, and I have to admit, it's the first time I've sort of spoken about it without getting really upset. But she referred to that moment, and she said to me, "Mum, do you remember the day we were going to Legoland?"
Wow, and she remembered that when she was 4. Jeez.
Yeah. Because at that moment, the worst of it had stopped. Beyond that, it didn't stop completely, but she said the worst of it stopped.
At 4.
At 4.
Jesus Christ.
So in a way, we'd done something. So we had not even begun to consider that it could have been what it actually was. And so for me, she turned grey when she told me. I absolutely knew she said that it was more than that, Mum. Because now she's 11, she was able to give me some idea. She never went into any major detail with me, not properly, because it was just so hard. I now know for her to actually vocalize the words, and that was it. I could see by the look on her face that this had happened, and our world literally turned upside down overnight. It was just horrifying.
When she did disclose to you, you were in the field at this point. What was your response? What did you feel like you could say in that moment?
I just hugged her and said, "It's all right, babes. Well, what's happened is it's wrong. It's really wrong." As she panicked, so I don't want anything to happen to him. She freaked. Basically, she got really worried that I was going to, I just said to her, "What you're telling me is really wrong. And we're going to have to do something about it." And she begged me not to. So in the end, I just said, "Right, well, we're going indoors." And we just basically got a duvet and sat on the sofa and hugged and cried. And she sort of told me little bits more as the day went on. And I was just totally thrown. I didn't quite know where to go with it, if I'm honest, at that moment. My first thing was that I just had to keep her away from him. Didn't want him anywhere near her or me, for that matter. It was just about protecting her from now on in.
Yeah.
I didn't know how my husband was going to respond. This was his father. I very quickly went into, okay, if my husband doesn't believe her, then I'm out there. No, I knew of a friend who had a house who I could probably rent. I just went straight into practicalities of getting her away.
Mama bear, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Poppy didn't want me to speak to her dad. Fortunately for me, I didn't speak to the perpetrator. And I say that because that was one of the things I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to go about it. And I found out that when we did eventually report what had happened, that was the best thing I could have done, is not to have gone to him, because it would have given him the opportunity to hide evidence too.
Yeah.
But you don't know that at the time. Do you know what I mean?
No, of course. You go into survival mode as well, and you reacted as any mother would react, I suppose, and just went for, what do I need to do to protect my child? And I think straight away you would want to go up to the perpetrator, and
I sort of didn't, because again, it's
yeah,
hard for you to get, because all of a sudden this man that you think you know or have known and have trusted, and we were quite close, and as a family had been through quite a lot, because he'd just split up with his wife, or my husband's mother, of 40 years. We'd supported him all through the divorce. We'd paid for everything. Like, he was very, very needy of us, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And he came across as very helpless and very, and for me, it was just like, yeah, you don't really have time for it to
no,
properly compute. And I think the biggest thing for me was speaking to my husband more than anything, is
yeah,
just sort of know which way he was going to go with it.
yeah. I mean, that must have been a shock for him as well, having your father.
A horrifying shock. He
Yeah.
really struggled, but he absolutely knew that she was, telling us the truth. There was, again, there was I now know, I didn't at the time, but I appreciate that. And especially with the work that I do, it seems to be more people are disbelieved than believed. It's quite rare for families to believe the child,
Yeah.
which I find horrifying.
Horrifying.
Mm.
Yeah. Me too. When it happened to me, I was a child, but when I disclosed, I was an adult. But I know that if anything happened to my daughter, who's now 8, I could not even think of not believing her. It's just, it baffles me how people could not believe their child, especially when it comes to that sort of thing. It's just, they just don't have, I don't think they can.
And again, through all the training that I've done, I mean, not that I really needed training on this, but the child doesn't have the capacity to make that up. As Poppy will say to you, and I know we're being very open about Poppy, but she waived her anonymity.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so outspoken about it as a family, because she's very insistent that we are. She feels that in order for more people to be believed, they need to hear it from a young person that's recently disclosed, been through the whole thing, rather than seeing an adult telling you about it. A child doesn't resonate with an adult. Don't realise that it's you that, that's them that they're talking to. So she was very, adamant that she wanted to see her while she was young, so that other young people knew she was one of them.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, that does make complete sense, because it's all about that understanding that you're not alone. And, there are people that have been through it, and having that, when she was a child, when she disclosed and stuff, and that's so incredibly brave. I mean, that is just unbelievable. So powerful and so brave of her. I find anyone brave to in order to speak out about their experiences, but to do it at such a young age, that's really incredible.
As soon as she realised that she hadn't done anything wrong, and she really got to grips. And again, and I think that was because she was 11 and she understood once, and that's why what therapists did for us was just phenomenal. I mean, and I now work with people that are in similar ages to myself, and then with 50s and so on, still, even in their 80s, is one of the ladies I've worked with, and still grappling with the fact that they feel it's their fault, and yet they can't seem to see the child that they were. And that's the heartbreaking thing, because it leads to so much devastation for them and life going forward.
Me personally, I've had a lot of therapy myself, and I've had but there is still that element of guilt and blaming myself for it. And, I always, there's elements of where I say to myself, why did I not say anything? Why did I not Why? I should have. And if I had, it wouldn't have got as bad, or he would have got arrested sooner, or he wouldn't have been able to have necessarily done it to anyone else. And so but I always remember I went to therapy and I spoke to this one lady and she said to me, right, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture little Chloe. And I still thinking, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to picture her. And she said, no, I want you to do it. And she said, right now, I want you to tell her exactly what you're telling me about yourself. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. She said, exactly. You wouldn't say that to a 9-year-old. You should have done something about it. What you're doing. Like, you just wouldn't say it to a 9-year-old or an 11-year-old or however old. You just wouldn't say, what are you doing? Why do you not say anything? That's it.
You're very much looking at it from the adult's perspective, right? From the child that you were. Yeah. It's one of the most powerful things you can do, actually, in therapy.
Yeah.
It's child work. So, yeah.
It really did open my eyes up and I thought, oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't. And then I remember her saying to me, imagine if it was your daughter, would you say that to your daughter? Why did you not say anything? You silly. That's so silly. What are you doing? It's your fault because you didn't say anything. No, of course I would never say that. So why am I saying it to myself? Why am I carrying around all of that?
That's because as a child, you don't know it's wrong. You're with a trusted adult. And I think this is the other very sad thing in society. If you look at adverts and so on, it's all very much about the stranger danger.
Yeah.
It's not, and it is a hard thing to get across to a child because you don't want them to feel that they can't trust anyone. It's trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
But it is a case of they are a trusted adult, a child. This is where, if ever you're thinking about, do I believe my child? They have no other reference. Poppy genuinely believed that, and it's sickening for me to hear that she thought all grandfathers did that. She knew it was uncomfortable. She knew it was wrong, but she didn't know it was wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It felt wrong, but wasn't.
Yeah.
She wasn't being told it was wrong. Yeah. A child is very much guided by the adults around them as to what's right and to what's wrong.
Yeah. And when they gain your trust as well, and they groom you for a certain period of time before the actual physical stuff does start. I mean, again, I'm kind of touching on my personal experiences as well, but I can imagine it's very similar for everyone where you do think it's normal. You know it's wrong. You do know it's wrong. I knew it was wrong. But I felt like, well, maybe this happens to lots of people, It doesn't seem like it's the wrong thing to do because he doesn't act like it's wrong. That's another thing. They don't act like they're doing the wrong thing.
And they blame the child.
Yeah.
They tell the child it's their fault. You made me do this. It's because you're so beautiful. It's because you're And again, I think that isn't something that society want to hear about, but need to.
Yeah.
In order to understand that children just cannot. I mean, it's the one thing I can get across in this podcast is children cannot make this up. And if we can grasp that, then so many more children will be believed.
I think that's so important. So important. They don't have the capacity to make it up.
No.
I mean, I could talk for hours and hours and hours. I really could. But I just wanted a quick, we've obviously talked about Poppy quite a lot, and I just wanted to sort of do a check-in and just make sure that everything, you're okay and you're okay to continue and
all good.
Do you want to, is there anything that you, apart from, wanting to get across that children can't make things up, but is there anything else that you would want to talk about that when people are listening to this and seeing this, take away from it? Anything that you want them to take away from today?
I think if you're another mother and you're listening, it is such devastating news. It does, and totally turn your world upside down when you believe your child. Because if you believe your child, you have to act on it. And to act on it, you divide families in half. There is no easy way of going through this process. But I don't regret what I did in calling him out on it. I don't. The thought of hiding it and living with that secret for the rest of my life, I don't think I'd have ever felt anywhere near possibly being a mother again if I had. Whichever way you look at this, it devastates your life, even if you're going to, sweep it under the carpet or try and ignore it or try and pretend it didn't happen. You live with that, or you live with the consequences of speaking out. But the upside of speaking out, as hard as it is your child to get a mother that believes them, and I think belief is one of the biggest healers. And this is all hindsight. Remember, I was in it. I didn't know this at the time, but I now have a daughter that she still needs a lot of support, but we have a very close relationship, and she is a healthy, functioning adult, and she has got a chance of a good life. Whereas I now work with many, many people that have not been believed. And I see the devastation that causes. And what I find is they're almost more angry with their mothers for not believing them than they are with the perpetrator.
Yeah.
They want protection than anything else.
Well, that's what we seek, don't we? It's humans, we seek protection, and we seek it from our parents, but I suppose predominantly from our mothers. So that makes total sense. It baffles me though when people just wouldn't, I can't. My mum believed me straight away. She was unbelievably shocked, and she was like, "Who? What? Huh?" But there was no doubt. There was not one part of me that I thought, "Oh, she's doubting me." You know, I never got that from her ever, and I never got that from anyone in my family. I've had it from other people of that. Oh, I'm not sure they actually believe me. I got it from the police, where I thought, oh, I don't know if he actually believes what I'm saying, and I've had it quite a lot of my life. But my parents, my sisters, and predominantly my mum, I never had any doubt that she didn't believe what I was saying. So I cannot even imagine how that must feel when you have someone that you seek to protect you, to help you, to support you. I can't imagine how that must feel. It's just devastated. It's just awful. You mentioned that before becoming a therapist and an advocate, you co-ran a successful business in landscaping, and you did products like the Chelsea Flower Show, which was amazing. Did you find that was a hard to make, or was it because of what happened, it was such a natural thing to go, right, I'm going to leave what I was doing? And I suppose you've kind of touched on it, the fact that it was something that you really wanted to do because of what happened to Poppy, but was it like a natural thing to stop that and go into therapy?
Well, again, as I think for people listening, when something like this happens, when we say about it being devastating, it really does turn your world upside down. So the fact that my father-in-law lived with us, we shared a house, the complications of that, we now know, very, very fortunate that he was arrested and was not allowed to come back to the house. There was all sorts of financial implications around that. And because it was partly his home, it was ours, we shared it. So there was that. We then also, because of the disbelief from the majority of my husband's family, who we were very close to, the difficulty we had was, as part of this, is our home was threatened because the family didn't believe they felt. His defence in court was that I'd made it all up to get him out of the house. So we had two companies. He also worked for us, a landscaping company.
Wow.
And we looked at our options, and it's like, what do we do? Because if he hadn't been found guilty, that meant the family were going to be coming for us, for the house, for the business. What do we do? So the best way forward, we felt at that time, was we needed to get Poppy out of the house because this was where the abuse had been happening.
Yeah.
So we thought, right, we're going to have to sell up. So we'll sell the house, we'll move away, so at least she's got somewhere there she's not constantly reminded of him. And then we thought, well, the problem is, so that was the first step. But because the landscaping business, and this was before COVID, we had 20 odd staff. We couldn't just leave, get new jobs in another area. The village that we lived in, my husband had lived in all his life. There was the Scout, there was all the family friends. It was very, there were those that believed and those that did. It was a very uncomfortable place to be to start with, as people started to find out what was happening, because this was he was arrested, and then it took about a year before he was actually charged. So we sold the house. We then decided that if he wasn't found guilty, there was no way we could stay living in the area that we lived in. So that actually meant we probably had to sell the business. And so we put the business up for sale. The business did sell because we thought if he wasn't found guilty, we would have to move quite a long way away in order to protect her and ourselves, to be honest with you. So we did both those things whilst waiting for him to be charged. And then once he was charged, the business did sell because we'd sort of started the process. It was quite complicated and very stressful.
I can imagine that meant
when the court case did go through and he was found guilty, and again, very fortunately, he was put away for 13 and a half years. We'd sold our business. We'd moved house, albeit just to the next village over initially. We were then left with no business, moved house and going. My husband was still tied in, and I was to an extent, whilst they took the company over and amalgamated it into the bigger company that had bought us out. It left us, what should we do now? Especially myself, I'd pulled back. I'd had to pull back anyway because of the care the puppy needed, and I needed to just be around her as well. I'd always worked full time. I felt a huge amount of guilt about that because I'd relied very much on my in-laws for childcare.
Yeah.
And that was a real struggle for me because it was like I put her in harm's way. I felt very guilty, but it was like I needed to work, but maybe not the hours that I did work. I didn't need to go to the lengths to achieve what I achieved. And so there was a real struggle with that as well. So I was left in a way in a fortunate position. We'd sold the business, we had a little bit of money behind us, and it enabled me to think, right, what shall I do now? And that's why I chose because
your situation has it really did shatter absolutely everything. That's another massive thing what I talk about when I do speeches and I talk about what happened to me. It's the after effects of what happened. I think a lot of people, I know I'm generalizing and not everyone will think this, but I think people hear, someone has been abused or sexually abused, and they think it's just in that specific moment. And actually it's how it affects absolutely everything going forward. And I talk very much about family, but I talk about generational trauma and how it's affecting my daughter now, and how it's not just what happened to me when I was 9 to 12, it's what's happened since then. And I'm now just turned 37, and it's still affecting my life and still affecting how I go about my day-to-day life and what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's how what happened to Poppy, how that affected you, in all of you, in such, it's just horrific. And obviously it's horrific for Poppy, but how it's then, with your having to move house and losing your company, and it's just everything. It's a massive, massive impact. And from another matter part, what I want people to take away from listening to this podcast is that how it's the biggest wave that just sweeps across everyone.
It does tear families apart, without doubt. Even today, one of Poppy's biggest losses was her aunt and great uncle, who she was incredibly close to. And they've chosen not to believe her, despite the fact that he was put away for 13 and a half years. And that breaks her heart because she was so close to them. And my husband, they were amazing with him. He's got very fond memories. And it taints memories as well. I think that's another thing to be noted. I look at pictures of Pops as a child now, and it hurts because you sort of think, was it happening then? How could I have not known? It just, it does taint an awful lot. You look at your wedding photos, my father-in-law's in them, and you just can't get them anymore. It just it weaves its way through so many parts of your life. You can't really escape it.
No, that's another thing. You can't. It's always there. It's like this little, kind of like a leech. It's always there. It raises this ugly head every now and again. Sometimes worse. Sometimes, like some days it's okay. But it's always there. It never ever stops, and it will never. It can get better, and there are it really can get better. And especially when you've got an amazing support system like Poppy has, which it sounds like, she's very lucky to have you and probably other people around her. And that helps as well when you have that amazing support around you. You can survive and you can keep going and you can wake up every day and go, right, okay, it's going to be a good day today. I'm going to be okay.
You absolutely can. And I think, by going through what we've been through, on the flip side, we've had, as much as the family fell apart, our friends were incredible. And the village that we lived in, they were amazing and have been continually since Poppy has spoken out. I have had those that said to me, please don't let her go through this. Can't you just put it behind you now? And I think that's something else, as we just both said, it's not something you can just put behind you. It sort of redirects your life. It carves it up, and it's just never the same again, basically. But there are some incredible, I mean, we were very, very lucky. I know now that the police officer we had, she was phenomenal. Social services who worked with Poppy were brilliant. Her school was fantastic. And the judge that she had caught her. Everyone, okay, it took 2 years at that point. I mean, I now work with people that they've been waiting for their perpetrators to be charged. We're into 3-4 years and they haven't even got a charging decision yet. But when you do get that justice, you can start again. And, as much as I'm a great support, as you said, for like Pops, it works the other way as well because, it's her strength. She's been through it. I haven't. And my older children too, it's really impacted their lives.
Imagine, yeah.
And they were amazing through it with her, particularly my older daughter. She was living with us at the time. She had just started to really, made a big career move. She's quite a bit older than Poppy. It devastated her, like she even said to me once, Mum, I just wish I could take it away from her, like it'd been me and not her. That's not what you want to hear as a mum, but it impacts her. I mean, I think one of the things, like social media, we were told to stay well off or in case it was used against us in court. That I'm still really cautious around it. My daughter is now got her own children. She's really cautious around it. It impacts so many things.
So many things.
It's also when you do get through the other side of it, yes, it still impacts, but we do have such a good life now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is possible.
It is. Yeah. I think that's really important to say as well. You've been through an awful lot of struggle, but to be where you are now and to see Poppy where she is now and other parts of your family and your daughters, and it is possible to come out the other side. And it doesn't go away, but to be able to use it in a different way, I think is really powerful. Yeah, your strength and Poppy's strength is incredible. Thank you so much for being here. It's been such a lovely time talking to you. I know it's been a hard talk, and they always are, and it's quite draining, I suppose, talking about it, but it's so vitally important. And I was going to ask the quick questions probably before we wrap up, was just, talking about your other daughters and how it affected them and your husband and stuff. Did you have any support in terms of, I know Poppy had a lot of support and you had the support, but did anyone else have support after or during the trial or the court or afterwards? Was there anyone that came and helped you, like how to deal with everything that you've been through?
I mean, as I said, the police officer was actually very, very good, and she put us forward to a charity called Family Matters. And at that time, because we're 2017-18 when this happened to us. At that time, we were referred to a charity called Family Matters that work in Kent. And my husband and I got 6 weeks of therapy. Poppy got 12 weeks. And my daughter that was still living at home, she also got 6 weeks, I think. It wasn't a lot, but I now know that was, at least it was something.
Yeah.
That unfortunately Family Matters can't do anymore because of financial restrictions.
Funding.
They still work very closely with the survivors, but they can't offer it to families anymore. But I mean, to me, I think having that therapy, even only those 6 weeks, one of the things that really shone out for me in that was like, I spent so much time trying to work out why, how. I think the best bit of advice I was ever given was, Miranda, if you could think like him, you'd be like him. And that was a real, light bulb moment. Probably not quite the right wording for it, but that just hit me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. And it was such a relief to hear those words. And it enabled me to then put it to one side and not to keep going over and over and over it.
Yeah.
But so that's what I got out of my 6 weeks, which supported me through the rest. We were very well supported by the victim support at court. Poppy was shown around. We had an ISVA, an independent sexual violence advisor. Again, that was through Family Matters, which sadly I know that's still available. I mean, I now work at Family Matters.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I knew that, yeah.
Yeah, I did all my training with them as well. So yeah, we have a lot of gratitude to that charity. But again, so many of the charities are really struggling now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I worked for a charity and know they are struggling. And do you think, I'm going to be talking about this in another episode with someone else, I think, but it's just interesting because you seem to know quite a bit about what things are still happening and what things aren't. And it's interesting, you said that you're in Kent, which I'm assuming that you're in that area. And like the person that I was talking to, he's from Manchester area. And it's interesting to hear from different people's areas and how they were treated during the process. I'm in Surrey, so I had Surrey police, and it's interesting to see how different they were to someone like how you were dealt with, and this person that I'm speaking to as well. It possibly was maybe a little bit more because Poppy was a child and I was an adult going through it. I think there's an element of that, obviously. And I think absolutely children should be dealt with very differently. But it's just, I find it very, very interesting because I wasn't treated very well at all. I'm not going to go into it now because that's probably for another episode. But it's just, I find it really fascinating how, I didn't get any support. My family didn't get any support. Nothing. It was very much the court finished. He was sentenced to 9 years and that was it. Okay, bye, see ya. Have a great life. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
All our support was actually through or during or whilst we were waiting. And obviously on the week that we were in court, we had an ISBA who supported us through it. And we saw the victim's support before we went into court. So Poppy was shown around and so on. After the court case, she literally just walked out and that was that. There was nothing at all. It's the strangest feeling.
Really odd, isn't it? And how my family weren't supported with that as well. My mum and dad went into court and they were witnesses and they had to give statements. And then it was really strange. Like there's a massive element around the guilt of putting someone away as well. It was a real, he's been found guilty. Okay, that I should be happy about it, but I'm not happy about it. It was a really strange thing. And there was absolutely no support afterwards at all. You do just get you got the result that you wanted. Off you go now. Go and have a great life. And you think, oh, what? It's really strange. You've been having this interaction. Well, mine lasted nearly 3 years. The interaction with this detective and having all of these talks and this evidence and this, that, and the other. And it's just constant. And then all of a sudden it just stops. It's a very odd process. And yeah, it was definitely something that I want to talk about in another episode because it does fascinate me. And it's just interesting how people have had different experiences, some better and some worse. So
it's definitely a postcode lottery from what I've learned over the years. Yeah. And I think one thing at the moment that I was listening, it's just such a huge back and waiting. It's the hardest thing actually now being a therapist is just holding out, giving them some light at the end of the tunnel on a system that's just broken.
Yeah.
It's really hard holding your clients when they're waiting.
Yeah.
Just for an email response, alone where we've got to. I hate saying we're lucky to have got where we've got to and got the justice. We shouldn't be saying that. We are
not the right word, is it? But no. I know exactly what you mean. I say I'm lucky and I'm not lucky. But yeah,
I feel slightly guilty. It's like, how did we manage to get the justice my daughter deserved? And yet I'm working with so many people that aren't anywhere close. And it is heartbreaking because before I did this work, I actually believed in the justice system.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Oh, God, no. No, absolutely not. I remember the court date was December 2019 and it ended just before Christmas. And then obviously in 2020, March 2020, we went into lockdown and it was all, COVID for the next couple of years. And the detective that I had came round to my house, I think it was around April 2020, to give back some evidence and things to me. And I remember him saying to me, we were having a bit of a chat and I hadn't heard from him at all for about 4 months. And he said, oh, you are ever so lucky. And I said, I'm sorry, what do you mean? He went, oh, to have got to court, he said, because now it's just people that are in the same position that you were in. It will not go to court now. And I said, but why? And he said, because of COVID and it just won't. They'll back it. It'll be backlogged and there'll be more because they have to prioritize, I suppose. And then if I was in this position now, it wouldn't get to court, and he wouldn't have probably have got the outcome it would have. So that made me go, oh, wow, okay. It was a funny feeling. So again, I felt like, well, should I be thankful? I'm not entirely sure how I should be feeling about that. But yeah, I feel slightly guilty that I had the outcome and I got the justice that I deserved, and how people are just waiting and children are waiting. And I understand why people just don't come forward, because you think, well, what's the point? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'd Debbie Downer as well, because I want people to be able to feel like they can come forward, and because you can get there. It can. It's just going to take a long time.
Yeah. No, and it does. I mean, that's very sadly good and bad. A very dear friend of ours spoke out after he'd heard about Poppy. She gave him the impetus to do it. He said, well, if she can, then I can. I'm a grown man. It took him 7 years.
Jeez.
But because he reported just before COVID and he hadn't even got, but yeah, it took 7 years, but he has got justice he deserves. So
and get there. It's just going to take it's a long slog, and and you know, I didn't work for 3 years. I couldn't work. I had a kid. I just had a baby. I was a single mom. I couldn't work, physically could not work, mentally and physically couldn't work. So that's another thing that, you know, people don't realize. If it takes 7 years, 3 years, however long, that's
it has a huge impact.
Huge impact on someone's physical and mental health. And that is something, I'm glad that they got justice, but that is a long time. A long, long time. I think the last question, I think we've kind of touched on it, but would be for survivors listening and for parents who may fear they miss something or feel consumed by guilt. What do you most want them to know?
It's the beauty of belief. If you believe your child and you're prepared to support them, that's it, really. That's, you know, if nothing else, that's what Poppy's taught me more than anything, is the fact that we believed her, and reach out for help. There is help out there. If your child does disclose to you, believe them. And that's the best thing that you can possibly do for them.
Yeah. Belief, absolutely. I think that's so important. I mean, thank you so much for being here and being so honest and speaking with such compassion and having so much strength. You know, you're incredible. And thank you for being on here. I really, really appreciate it. And I think this is going to...
Thank you for having me.
No.
Any further support I can give, be very happy to.
Thank you.
For having me.
Thank you so much.